that God is surprising should not surprise us. After all, the prophet Isaiah tells us God's ways are not our ways. God tells us, my thoughts are not your thoughts. And did not Jesus himself say in some other part of the gospel that the person who wants to keep his life should lose it? So much so that in Paul's letter, we hear that he seems to be in a dilemma. He wants to die, but he also wants to remain alive to serve the Lord. It's not usual that people want to die, but that's because Paul has started to think in the ways of God. There's something about the parable, of course, today that may surprise some. The vineyard owner, obviously a symbol for God, seems to be unjust, giving the same wages to people who worked only 1 hour and those who work the whole day. Of course, a concern for a just wage, a living wage, and equitable distribution of resources and so on is very valid. But it is a mistake to think that the concern of this parable, this story of a rabbi, is a discussion of justice in the workplace. That completely misses the point. No, this parable is about God's call and our response to God's call. We can examine this story on 2 levels, and for this I'm indebted to Father Krempa. First, of course, on the historical level, we know that Jesus in this story is trying to show how and why the Gentiles were getting to enter into the kingdom and experiencing God's forgiveness. He wants to show how God calls not only the Jewish people to share his life and his love, but lo and behold, he also calls the Gentiles, who are in a manner of speaking, the latecomers, who now receive God's offer of salvation and redemption. By the way, we are the Gentiles too, and so we must be grateful for this parable. Israel then remains God's specially chosen people. They have a very special role in the plan of salvation, but their being chosen does not mean that God cannot choose that others also enjoy the privilege of being recipients of God's self-revelation and God's self-giving. So this parable is a beautiful and wonderful revelation of the generosity, the universal will of God that all may be saved. Now, we can also apply this parable to ourselves in a few ways. First, it shows that people are called to Christ at different times in their lives. Some, as it were, are baptized in the morning. Others receive Jesus in a much more personal way in their teenage years. Others go through some midlife crisis and then find Jesus really real in their lives. And others, even as senior citizens, find a renewed discovery of God's love in their lives. So at any age then, we can be drawn to Christ or we can be called closer to Him. So second, I'd ask you to notice how the owner in the story did not compare one group of workers to the other. They were all paid because they answered the call. The same is true with us. The Lord does not compare us with one another. Each one has unique talents, weaknesses even, strengths, challenges, and so on. But even if we had the same, we don't, but even if we had the same, let's say, opportunities and problems, the combinations are different. The mix of, to use Father Krempa's words, burdens and graces are not identical. What the Lord asks us is that we follow Him with whatever we have and as well as we can. So we should not look at how the next person is called or blessed by God in this or that way. We are all called as we are, where we are. And thirdly, from the story, the parable, each of us can say that we all have various seasons in our spiritual life. Each of the times of our life. You know, there's a famous song by, this will date me, but it will date others more, Petula Clark, who sang in the morning of my life and so on, in the noontime of my life and in the evening of my life, there is a question that I must answer. Was I brave and strong and true? And did I fill the world with love my whole life through? And all of that, no? So each of the times of our life, morning, noon, mid-afternoon, late afternoon, also enables us to bring a special gift or strength to the work in the vineyard. Young people in our church and our communities of faith, they bring not experience, but they bring not only vitality and strength, but questions. The young people challenge us, no? And they help us to remember to reflect on our faith and communicate it to them in a way which wins belief. Now, in early adulthood, what are the gifts if we are called to serve in the vineyard? Well, early adulthood, we're trying to establish family, job, and profession, and we serve as ministers there. And we bring competence, we bring abilities to precisely build community and so on. And then midlife, there are books about this. Sometimes it's a time when we take a second look. We reappraise our lives. And that is a gift too, because sometimes, though it's a very painful and uneasy time in one's life, it's a time when we look at sometimes we're able to see through the illusions of our society. All our life up to midlife, we were sort of taken in by what society said is valuable, what the world says is cool, and so on. And then we reach the point and we say, that's not all really that important. And so we start dropping off excesses, we start really finding out what is truly important, and we make our stand. So judgment and some maturity and focus, these are gifts of midlife. And then the senior years, and the so-called golden years, there's the gifts of wisdom and tolerance. So friendships become more important. We long for more peace with others and peace with ourselves and so on. So at this point, seniors may not bring all that much energy and work and all of that, but they bring experience and wisdom. I must say, though, that I know of a senior who's 8 years old and still playing tennis. And the youth, although they may not bring a lot of experience, bring in precisely strength and vitality and challenge and love. So therefore, it's a very rich parable for us. And as we gather together in this celebration of the love of God, which is generous and life-giving, we call to mind the fact that at every hour of the day and every season of our life, the Lord calls us. The Lord invites us to the vineyard, and it is our great joy to respond with generosity just as much as He has poured Himself out to us in generosity. Amen.